Well, good morning. It's good to see you. Glad to be up here, as always. We're in the book of Mark. The title of the sermon is We Are Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus. We are Bartimaeus. That may seem a little odd to you. Maybe you're like, no, my name is not Bartimaeus. No, hold on. Bartimaeus is the guy we're going to learn about in this story. And we are Bartimaeus. We are the Bartimaeus before, during, or after this story. But in some way, we are Bartimaeus. This is an interesting part of Mark, more so to me as I study the content and the way a book is constructed. Look, all the healing stuff, when Mark was talking about healing, that was early. He talked about healing over and over and over and over and over. We're not in a section where he talks about healing a lot. And yet here we have this healing, poof, out of nowhere. Jesus has already healed a blind person, so Bartimaeus is blind, so that's not new. It's not a particularly interesting healing. There isn't even any spitting this time. You know, the last couple times there's been spitting, which was really interesting and kind of gross. Look, there's nothing that weird about this one. And on the surface, it looks pretty straightforward. But I'd like to submit to you, I'd like to propose that this message about Bartimaeus, this story about Bartimaeus, it is about a blind man becoming healed. It is also, to me, the clearest illustration of the process of salvation in the entire book of Mark. In fact, Mark hasn't really talked much about salvation as a process before or after this. He's talked about aspects of it. He's talked about faith. He's talked about Jesus calling people to follow him, and we've looked at pieces of the puzzle. But one piece at a time almost. One little bit at a time. And yet in this illustration, I believe that every single word has to do with the process of salvation. All of it. So now that I've said that, it's my job to prove that. So I get that. That's what I'm going to have to do. Let's start, first of all, with just reading the passage. We're in Mark chapter 10. We're going to read between 46 and 53. Jesus is almost to Jerusalem. From this point forward, everything that happens is going to be that final time. That final week in Jerusalem before he dies. It's going to be his death. It's going to be after his death. Everything that happens from this point forward is either the Passion Week or after. This is the last thing that happens. They're going through Jericho. We're almost there. And this is something that happens just as they get there. Mark 10, starting with verse 46. And they came to Jericho. And as he was going out from Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road. And when he had heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And many were sternly telling him to be quiet. But he kept crying out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, Call him here. And they called the blind man, saying to him, Take courage, arise, he is calling for you. And casting aside his cloak, he jumped up and came to Jesus. And answering him, Jesus said, What do you want from me? Or what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabboni, I want to regain my sight. And Jesus said to him, Go your way. Your faith has made you well. And immediately he regained his sight and began following him on the road. I'm just going to go through this chunk by chunk, all the way through, pretty much beginning to end. But I do want to take something a little bit out of order and talk about the guy's name, Bartimaeus. Interesting name, Bartimaeus. Bar means son of. So, for instance, we have a Simon Bar Jonah in the Bible. That means Simon, son of Jonah. That's useful because there were a ton of Simons in the New Testament times. It was a very common name. So you needed some kind of designator to figure out which Simon. Bar Jonah simply meant Simon, son of Jonah. So what's this guy's name? Son of Tim. Look, that's his name. Imagine, my dad's name is Dwayne. All right? Imagine, who's that guy? Oh, that's the son of Dwayne. Well, who is he? No, I think he's the son of Dwayne. My only identity in life at all was that I was the son of someone else. Imagine that. Imagine that in his blindness and being a beggar and being a person, his worth was so low in the community, no one even knew what his name was. They just called him the son of the other guy that they knew. His name is really weird. To say Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, is it's sort of like a bad English comedy. What's your name? I'm son of Tim. The son of Tim. That's what Bartimaeus means. I find that interesting. I find it interesting that this blind beggar's worth has been so ground to dust that his only identity is that he's the son of somebody else. But let's start from the beginning. They come to Jericho. That's a real place. And by the way, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, is a real person in a real place. He's one of the only people that Jesus healed that gets named, by the way. Which makes me more interested in the name than ever, when he's one of the few people Jesus healed that got named. So there we are in verse 46, and we're in a place called Jericho, and Jesus is with his disciples and a great multitude. Many were following Jesus already. There were disciples already. But what this man needed was not the crowd. What this man needed was Jesus. He was going to join the crowd. We'll get to that. But what he needed was Jesus. And this little point is actually going to come back later. So I just wanted to point out, there's a crowd. But what this man needs isn't the crowd, isn't the disciples, isn't the great multitude. He's going to need Jesus. The next thing that we find out in verse 46 is that he's a blind beggar. I don't think I can imagine a better description of who we are before we meet Jesus than a blind beggar. Blind means I can't see. I can't even find what I need. See, it's one thing to be a beggar. Okay. I mean, as a beggar, you can see if there's food over there. In fact, you can maybe steal a banana because you see that there's a banana and you could go get a banana. A blind person can't even see what they need. They're not even aware of what they need. They cannot perceive what they need. They cannot perceive the world around them. They are lost, and they're completely dependent on anyone else, and there are needs that they have, but they can't even tell what it is. That is what we're like before we meet Jesus. Our need and our loss and our misunderstanding is so deep. It isn't just that we have a need. It has a need we can't even perceive. We can't even perceive the need we have. We can't even understand what it is. It isn't that if we tried hard enough we could get it. We can't even see what it is we need to get. He is a blind beggar, which is a wonderful illustration of what we are before we meet Jesus. Blind beggars. Without the Holy Spirit, it's impossible to see the truth that we don't understand. Romans 3:11 through 18 explains it really well. If you want to go there. Acts, Romans 3. 11 through 18, it reads like this. There is none righteous, that's starting in verse 10. There's not even one. There's none who understands. There's none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they become useless. There is none who does good. There's not even one. Their throat is an empty grave, and with their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are on their path, and the path of peace they have not known. But I love verse 11. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks God. We might in an abstract way wish we understood God, but we can't even seek what we can't see. We don't understand. So Bartimaeus is a blind beggar, a man who can't even see the things that he needs. And he was sitting by the road, and they were leaving Jericho, right? So this isn't just by the road, this is by the gate. He is sitting by the exit gate. He's sitting there as people come in and out of Jericho, and he's begging for food. He's trying to get what he needs. The guy's sitting at the gate. He probably sits in the same place every day. You've been to cities before, if you've been to Europe, or I don't know what this like in Perth. I haven't traveled enough from Australia, but you can go to specific places and there are always beggars there. There are always beggars in that spot because there's traffic in that spot and there's a good chance somebody will give you something. He's sitting there by the road. Verse 47. He heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene. So we got to stop there again. He heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene. Could he see that it was Jesus the Nazarene? Someone had to have told him. Somebody had to tell him. Look, there were crowds of people that could have followed around and seen what Jesus did. This man, if he believes that Jesus can heal someone's sight, why does he believe? Someone told him that he healed people. Was he able to see Jesus heal other people? No. Any faith that this man has, any belief, is because someone was willing to tell him about Jesus, and without seeing anything, he believed them. We talk about how cool it must have been for the disciples because they got to see Jesus actually do stuff, and we have to do it all by faith. We don't get to see it so much as they did. Okay, well, this guy's just like us. He doesn't get any advantages we don't have. He didn't see Jesus do anything he doesn't see. His faith came from hearing someone had to tell him. That's exactly the way it happens today. Look, until someone told him about Jesus, he had nothing. He couldn't see Jesus. He couldn't understand Jesus. He couldn't find Jesus. He couldn't go on a journey to seek Jesus. He couldn't explore enough of his own self to find Jesus. Someone needed to tell him. And it's exactly the way it is. We needed someone to tell us that Jesus was near. And if we're saved and we know Jesus, let me tell you something. They need someone to tell them Jesus is near. They're not just going to scoop it up by osmosis.
That's right.
Isn't it going to magically happen? Someone needs to tell them Jesus is near. This is why it's so important that we share Jesus with other people. We never know who would meet Jesus if they could just figure out where he was. And what does Bart do, having heard about Jesus? Well, in verse 47 it says he heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene, and he began to cry out into the dark. He cried out towards what he could not see. He cried out to what he could not understand. He cried out to that which he wasn't yet experiencing. He wasn't experiencing Jesus yet. He hadn't touched yet. He hadn't heard anything yet. He hadn't experienced any power yet. He cried out into the dark towards what he did not know, could not see, and could not understand. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people who've met Jesus, and that was about the first start of anything significant. A realization that they were in need. Someone told them about God, someone told them about Jesus, and they cry out into the dark, God, I don't understand you, I don't get this, but whoever you are, however this works, would you help me? This is a pretty normal start to the journey of being a Christian. He starts where most people, I think, would start. A cry out into the darkness. Somebody help me. But not just somebody. Jesus. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Oh, there is a whole lot there. Let's just start with this. Son of David meant something very specific. Jesus' dad was not named David. Jesus' dad was named Joseph. So what did he mean, Son of David? That's a title. That's not just oh, you're the Son of David. No, Son of David meant something. Here's what it meant. Jesus, you who have the authority to take the throne of David. You, Jesus, who have the rightful authority to take the throne of David. You, rightful King of Israel. That's what he just said. Rightful King of Israel, have mercy on me.
Amen.
See, he isn't, he's already putting some stuff there, right? He's already taken a huge amount of weight and put it on Jesus. This isn't just Jesus the prophet. This isn't just Jesus the nice guy. This isn't just Jesus somebody who's been traveling around. He is ascribing to Jesus the authority Jesus deserves in his cry out into the dark. He may not know him, he may not have experienced him, but he's going to give Jesus the authority he deserves. It's a good start. It's a good start. Pretty important start. If we don't acknowledge who Jesus is and we cry out, then we're not going to get the Jesus who is. We might get the Jesus who someone made up. And so he cries out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And I love that word, mercy. I told you I was going to go word for word. I'm not joking. Look, mercy is a whole lot of things, right? What is mercy? Mercy is, well, I've shoplifted, and I got caught, and I'm in front of the judge, and I say to the judge, look, I've never shoplifted before, I was really hungry, and I don't have a criminal record, would you please have mercy on me? Mercy can mean, I am guilty, would you please not punish me? Mercy can also mean you're in a battlefield, and you're at war, and your enemy has defeated you, and the sword is at your throat, and you're saying, okay, I give up, I lose, you win, have mercy on me. Mercy can also mean, friend, helper, I'm hungry, I'm starving, you have a coin in your pocket, would you please have mercy on me? Would you give me what I lack? You know what I think he meant? All of it. See, becoming a Christian is all of that. What we need to approach God with is all of that. I am guilty before a judge, and I need mercy. I am at war with God, and God has a right, and He has won that war, and I need to surrender to His loving victory. And I am in need, and I am desperate, and I have nothing, and I am destitute, and I'm without, and I need what God has, because without God I don't have anything. It is all these kinds of mercy, all wrapped up in one. Son of David, have mercy on me. Give me what I can't give myself. If that's not part of us moving towards an understanding of what it means to be a Christian, we have missed an essential component of the process. We have to understand that when we become a Christian, when we go to God, what we're crying out for is mercy for our sin, mercy in our war with God that we must lose, that we must surrender in our desperate need for holiness and truth and wholeness, that we can never make within ourselves. We need to cry out for mercy of all of that. Verse 48. And many were sternly telling him to be quiet. How common is it for the world to discourage the one pursuing Christ? How common is it for some voice from somewhere to say, oh, that's all fantasy, that's just a story. I've even heard of people feeling discouraged by the church, as if the church has somehow made them feel so unworthy that they didn't feel like they could come to God because they didn't measure up to the church. That somehow we as a church have said, no, this isn't for you because you're too low, or you're too broken, or you're too addicted, or you're too whatever. And if that's ever true, it is a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching thing to be true. That should never be true. And yet I believe that happens. Sadly, tragically, horribly, I believe it happens. There are discouraging factors that will pull people away from pursuing Christ. And this man's no different. He's calling out, and many sternly told him, be quiet, don't call out. You don't try to do this. He's not for you. He's too important for you. That's Jesus, don't you know? Don't you see the crowd? Oh, you don't see anything because you're the blind beggar. Shut up. He's facing that. He's facing that right now. In the midst of his need, in the midst of him crying out for God, he's being told, shut up, beggar. It's not for you. It's pretty harsh. That's what it says. But the one who finds Jesus is the one who does what he does. The one who finds Jesus is the one who does exactly what he does. He cried out all the more. He cried out all the more. He didn't stop. He didn't get discouraged. He didn't quit. He didn't run away. He didn't back down. He was like, no, Jesus is the one with my answer. I can't see him. I can't feel him. I've never touched him. I'm crying out in the dark, but I still believe. I believe that Jesus is the one with my answer. And he's crying out into the dark with no feedback yet. There's nothing happening yet. And yet people are saying, no, you're wrong. It's just an illusion. It's fantasy. And it'd be so easy to believe because he's just crying out in the dark. But he says, no, I'm going to stay with this. Jesus is my hope. And in his persistence, in his willingness to stand, though the rest of the world is telling him to shut up, Jesus stops in verse 49. Last week we looked at Jesus' focus right now. He's marching towards Jerusalem. This isn't a casual stroll. He isn't happily chatting with his disciples as he marches towards his death. We looked at last week how this is a determined, focused man about to go to serious conflict. He is moving with a purpose. And yet, so it isn't that he's ambling, talking, shaking hands, kissing babies, happens to come to a blind guy. No. Jesus is moving with purpose and determination towards a focus. He is moving, but here comes this voice, Son of David, have mercy, and he stops. He may not have stopped for much at this moment. He is moving with purpose towards Jerusalem. But he hears that. That he hears. That call, that faith, that desperation for him, that he hears. He stops. He stops and he says, call him here. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take courage, arise. He is calling for you. See, that just missed me right up. Hold on. Jesus calls for us. It is what happens. It's part of becoming a Christian. Jesus must call us. He doesn't walk by. The King calls us. The King notices us. The King invites us into his presence. And suddenly, the message changes. The message goes from, oh, you jerk, you fool, you stupid person, you beggar, to take courage. Oh, take courage. He's calling for you. And yet we should take courage. And when Jesus calls us, I have to tell you, it does do something. That's our first contact. That is when we start to experience God really for the first time. When we feel that thing, that God speaking to us, God pulling us toward him, and we realize, oh, there is God. Woo! Okay, yep, I'm getting this now because I'm experiencing God right now, and he's calling to me. Okay. If you've never felt Jesus call you, we should talk. See, Jesus would never have walked by without stopping, but we need to understand the importance of that call. If Bart had begged and begged and begged, but Jesus had still walked by, Bart would still have been blind. He still would have been lost. See, there was an aspect of this of him crying out in the dark. But the essential function that had to happen was that Jesus had to call him. That was the turning point. That's what changes everything. That's what takes a life from going this way and goes chunk and changes it and puts it in a different direction entirely. Jesus calls him. And his reaction is awesome. Verse 50. In casting aside his cloak, he jumped up and came to Jesus. Okay, now, I get it. You're like, what's the big deal? He cast aside his cloak. Slow down. Couple things we really need to think about. Number one, blind people don't cast aside anything. And do you know any blind people? I do. They don't throw stuff. They set them carefully. And they set them carefully in a very specific spot so they can find it again. Because if you toss something, it's gone. Not only that, he's in a crowd. He's taken his cloak and tossed it. He's never going to find it again if he can't see later. Not only that, what does that represent? His cloak. Who cares? What's his cloak? Well, his cloak is this guy's only security at all. It is his warmth when it gets cold. It is his shade when it gets hot. It's the little bit of padding under his butt when he gets tired of sitting on the dirt. It is what covers him at night. It's his blanket. It's his bed. And if for a person like this, it may be the only thing other than the clothes he's actually wearing that he owns. This is probably it. This is everything that Bartimaeus owns as a person. All of his security, all of his protection, all the things that he's ever held on to. When little kids said, hey, there's a blind guy, let's go throw rocks. This cloak, this thin little cloak, was the only shield he had to pull up over his head to keep those rocks from hitting him. You understand, this cloak is all the security and protection this man owns at all. And he takes everything he's ever depended on, the only thing he's got, everything else was just a gift. What he owned as his little bit of protection in life that he could hold on to and shelter from the storms, he takes that and goes, I don't need that anymore. And he walks towards Jesus, stumbling in the dark. He walks towards Jesus with no understanding, with no, he just hears the call. He knows that Jesus wants him. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know the truth. And he takes all the stuff he ever depended on and goes, I'm not going to hold on to that anymore. I'm going to make my way that direction. Whatever that means. And he stumbles into the dark towards Jesus, having left behind everything that he had ever said is my protection before. And he jumps up. he came to Jesus, which may have been quite comical. I don't know. He's blind. Somebody either led him or he stumbled through. I'm guessing at this point that because Jesus called, someone's going to be nice and kind of shelter him and push him in the right direction, give him a little bit of advice. You know, people find Jesus on their own. It doesn't, happen. And I hear these stories of I was in a hotel and I was really bad off and I found a Bible and I read it and I became a Christian. I'm like, wow, that's not normally how it goes. Normally somebody helps. Normally somebody walks alongside. And he comes to him, and Jesus asks him in verse 51 a seemingly ridiculous question. What do you want? What do you want me to do for you, blind guy? And it sounds silly in a way. I mean, is Jesus being cruel, or is he being insensitive or clueless? Is Jesus asking him because he hasn't noticed the man's blind? I don't think so. You know what is important in the process of becoming a Christian? Our answer to the question that Jesus just asked. See, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And there are other answers he could have come up with. There are. Jesus, I got blinded by someone and I want revenge on the person who blinded me. Or, could you give me a beautiful house and servants so that in my blindness I have everything I want and need? He could have asked for that. He could have asked for a lot of things. His answer mattered. He needed to tell Jesus what was wrong. He needed to tell Jesus what needed to be fixed. He needed to admit to Jesus where he was at, and he needed to be honest about what it was he needed at the root of his problem. Jesus doesn't say yes to everything. If you were here last week or listened to my sermon last week, just last week, there was a question. Jesus said no. Two disciples said, hey, could we sit on your right side or your left side? And Jesus said, no. Well, that's really not my place to say that. Here's what I'll say yes to. Yes, you can suffer the way I've suffered, and you can live a tough life like I have, and you can bear up under persecution and burdens. You can have that. He didn't say you can have the seats on my right and my left. There are things that Jesus says yes to. There are things that Jesus did not say yes to. What does our answer need to be when God asks us what we want? What we need is raw honesty about our real problem. He needs us to admit things like, I can't control my thoughts. I neglect my family. I am so selfish and I need to get fixed. I can't forgive people, and I don't know how to fix that I can't forgive people. See, God comes to us and says, what is it that you really want? And what we need to tell him is the truth of what's wrong with us that needs to be fixed. Here's what we shouldn't be telling him. God, could you just fix this mess I got myself into by my own selfishness? Could you make my wife into the person I want so I can be happy? God, could you take away everything that's difficult so I can live well? Or anything at all that is essentially, God, I was hoping that you could give me what I want. But here's the problem. When we turn Christianity into a gift dispenser only, some sort of thing where the reason we go to God is because God is simply going to bless us, and that's just all there is. That's awesome. God's going to bless us. And we go to God and say, why are you coming to me? And we say, God, so that you can give me heaven, and you can make my life awesome, and because I want a new car, and I heard you could bless me. See, that's not our problem. That doesn't fix our problem. We need to go to God and say what? I'm blind. We need to go to God and say I'm broken. We need to go to God and say I'm ruined. I'm helpless. I'm a beggar. I need fixing. I am so broken. Would you fix me? And then he says, yeah, we can do that. We can fix you. We can answer that question wrong. And when we answer wrong, we do not get what he got. Bart speaks the truth of his need. And so and then he does something else. The blind man said to him, Rabboni, I want to regain my sight. Just a little word, Rabboni, your version may say teacher. Do you know what it means, like word for word? My great one. Isn't that kind of cool? That's the word for word translation of that phrase. My great one, I want to regain my sight. See, there's still this reverence, isn't there? There's this son of David, rightful king of Israel, my great one. It's personal. It's intense. It's real. It's reverent. It's respectful. From beginning to end. I want to regain my sight. And then Jesus said to him in verse 52, go your way, your faith has made you well. Again, I want to talk about the word for word there because it's really important. You made you well, word for word, in the original language says, has saved you. Has saved you. Your faith has saved you is the actual words. Your faith has made you well. Your faith has saved you. And how long does salvation take? Immediately. Immediately. That's how long. It takes immediately long. And he immediately regained his sight. And he was healed of what was wrong with him. And he now experienced Jesus with his sight. He has heard him. He has seen him. He is connected with them. And all the things that were denied him before have been given to him. And he goes back to the side of the road and continues begging. No! No. And he began following him on the road. Go with me with this visual image. Let's say we were following John. Physically following him. John is walking. We are all following John. Right? Okay. And I decided to follow John at a distance of 100 meters. And Josh has decided to follow John at a distance of 200 meters. Okay? But we're both following John. Well, we're both still following John. We've decided at some different distances, I'm not sure. Maybe Josh and I are mad at each other. Josh and I are not mad at each other. I don't know. But you know what? Josh and I are united in our following of John. We have now become part of the group of people following John. Now, this is what the church is. The church is the people following Jesus. When you join the people who follow Jesus, you join the church. If you're not following Jesus, then you're not in the church, and you cannot actually be in the church unless you're following Jesus. That group, following Jesus, that's the church. And some might be a little closer and some farther away, and I want to be over here because you people smell. In a way, okay. But all the people following Jesus are the church. That's what makes you the church. You're following Jesus. It's not the group that saved him, and yet following him immediately made him part of the group. He is part of the group. He's part of the church. And I gotta say, isn't it great to be following Jesus, and if I trip, I've got someone else to pick me up? Isn't it great to be following Jesus, and I've run out of food, but you've got some? We're following Jesus, and we've stopped, and Jesus is talking, and I'm having a hard time hearing, but you heard, and you told me. Thanks. We're following Jesus, and I'm short, but you're tall, and you put me up on your shoulders. Look, we're following Jesus. We do it together. And Jesus is still the answer, but we can help each other on the way. We can hold each other up on the way. When we trip, or we fall, or we stumble, or whatever, we can lift each other up, and we can keep going. This is something we do together. We need to do it together. We don't need to do it together because we agree on everything. We need to do it together because we're all following the same person. And he'll fix the stuff that we disagree about over time. The longer we listen, and the closer we listen, and the longer we follow, the more we will understand better and better. Just preach to a couple pages. Hold on. And that's the end of the story. It's a story of a man that Jesus met on the way to the cross. Jesus is on his way to die for the sins of mankind. And on the way there, Mark takes this story and God puts all these pieces of the gospel, of the path to salvation, just planted in there. Jesus is on the way to the cross, and here are all these little things you need to understand about what it means to approach Jesus, to be saved by Jesus, for this to work. And the gospel is just, in no other place in Mark is it outlined as tightly, all these little pieces, as right here. Even though he's talking about a blind man. And so it is wonderful. It is wonderful that Bartimaeus ends this story able to see. You know what's way better? He ends this story following Jesus. That's better. Yeah. That's so much better. That is so much more impacting. That is the most important thing that happens in the story. The most important thing is not that Bartimaeus can now see. The most important thing is that he is now following Jesus. That is the important part. And how he got there is how we must get there. And so we are Bartimaeus. You are either in this room and you're feeling blind and lost and not sure, and someone needs to tell you that Jesus is near. Or you are in the process. Maybe you are calling out in the dark. Maybe you feel like you know that Jesus is. Someone has told you that Jesus is, but the truth of the matter is, if you were to be honest about where you are spiritually, you would say, Keith, the truth of the matter is, I still feel like I'm crawling out into the dark. I don't feel like Jesus has called me yet. I don't feel a connection yet. I'm calling and I'm frustrated and I'm sitting here. When is someone going to help me get there? I would really like to talk with you if that's where you're at. Or we are the ones that have received our sight. We are the ones who are no longer spiritually blind. We are the ones who are now able to perceive Christ, have been called by Christ, and are following Christ. And when we're on the way, and there's someone on the side calling out, let's help them. And tell them. Let's tell the blind as we go, Jesus is here. This is what he can do. This is what he's done for me. This is what he's done for others. And they cannot know if we don't tell them because they are blind. And if we silently walk by, they will never know because they are blind. They cannot know if we don't tell them. We are Bartimaeus, one way or another. And what we need to do in the story depends on where we're at. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, if there are people in our lives that need to hear what Jesus can do. There's people in our lives that don't know yet. And if we tell them and they're not interested, then that's not our problem. But if they don't know and we don't tell them, that's our problem. How can we not? How can we live in a world of blind people and not tell them what Jesus can do? Or if there is a person in this room that is just now going, really? Wow? Lord, I pray that they would cry out into the dark. Though they don't understand God, though they do not even feel God, though they don't feel yet anything, that in their desperation, their hope, that flicker, that could it be? Could it be that there's a God who would sacrifice himself for me and would save me and would change it? Could it be? Could it be that my blindness can be cured and my brokenness and everything that's wrong in this and here? Could it be that it can be fixed? If there's a person in this room or that we know, Lord, be with them and encourage them to cry out into the dark. That they would get an answer. That they would not be discouraged by the people around them that tell them that it's a fantasy or it's a fairy tale or it's silly or it's for weak people. Or just help them to shut all that out and to continue to cry out into the dark. Because you will answer in mercy. You will stop. Jesus, we know you'll stop for the cry. You'll stop the world for the cry, and you'll call, and they will hear you, and they will come to you. Lord, make us honest about what it is we need from you. Cure us of asking you so much of what we want and so little of what we need. Would you humble us, that we would come to you with our faults, not just with our wish list. Because you will always fix what's wrong in us if we will put that in your hands, put our life in your hands, and say, God, I am broken, would you fix me? That answer is always yes. That's what Bartimaeus was willing to do. But Lord, we are thankful for the joy of our sight. We are thankful for the joy of our spiritual awakening. We are thankful for the joy of seeing your face for the first time when you called us and you spoke to us and suddenly our eyes were open and we saw you. We understood you. We got it. Finally, this is God and he is real. Lord, we thank you for that moment. May we never forget that moment. May we be empowered by that moment, that we would never want to take our eyes off you again, because that moment of seeing you was so brilliant and so pure and so beautiful and so perfect that why would we ever want to look at anything else ever again? Because we saw your face. Would we follow you with passion, because you are the one who healed us as blind beggars to make us into something completely different. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.